talks are about deer reproductive biology. Today, Geoff's taking a different tack and is going to talk to us about an environmental project that AgResearch has been leading. Welcome, Geoff.
Thanks, Catherine. I talked to you last year about this project, but it was only just starting then, and it is a long-term project, and to expect to see a lot of results out of it after a year is probably a bit much, but it's important to keep this up front there and keep you aware of what's going on. We are active in the environment space, and part of that is to be proactive in terms of doing the research that will help farmers mitigate impacts from deer on their farms, but also to help policymakers make realistic decisions on behalf of farmers. So this project started last year, and it aimed to understand the long-term nature of the interaction of deer and other farm livestock on waterway on hill country farms. Now we're focusing on hill country, it's not to say it has to be all very steep, but it really is where the bulk of the deer industry is based, away from the flat dairy country and into areas that are actually major catchments for all of our waterways. We're interested in systems for identifying significant point source damage and contamination, and I'll describe what I mean by point source further into the talk. But ultimately what we want to develop is methods that cost effectively mitigate damage or contamination. And reality too is that policymakers are making decisions on your behalf without the facts. And so really a lot of this is about informing policy of the real rather than the perceived issues in relation to deer. So that's the background behind it. And what we have underway now is 5 catchments on 5 deer farms, soon to be another 5 added in the next few months. Where there is twice yearly assessment through GPS tracking systems of the entire catchment on that farm. And from that we survey the damage all the way along the streams, we score it, and there's twice yearly water quality sampling along the entire stream between 10 and 50 sites. But the farmers themselves also do monthly water monitoring at a single point on the stream, usually down at the bottom end of the stream where it exits the farm. We measure things like sediments, nitrates, nitrites, phosphorus, E. coli, and a few other measurements as well. We also record the continuous presence of stock, or continuously record the presence of stock. And I will reiterate that it's not just deer on these farms. Some of the farms actually are running just deer. But as you'll see in some of the photos, there are other livestock as well, and be able to tease that effect of the different livestock species is going to be quite a difficult one. Plus we obtain local weather records. These are the 5 farms that we started last year. They're all happy for their names to be put up in front of you there. So at the moment we have a span across from Marara Station, down in Southland, Griffel over by Wanaka, Halden Station in the Mackenzie Basin. Up in the North Island we have Wairinga and Shabor farms, which are in different parts of the Waikato King Country catchments. A quick gloss through of some of the pictorials of these farms, just to give you an idea of the range of the nature of the country we're dealing with. So in no particular order, this is Griffel, which is a high country farm, very picturesque setting against the backdrop of Lake Wanaka, and very typical of some of our high country, subalpine high country farms. And this particular farm runs only deer on these catchments. Shabor Farms, which is in Oparau in the Waikato near the Kawhia Harbour, Steve Borland's place. Very, very steep, gnarly country for the Waikato, I have to say. And this is one of the streams here that we're selecting from. And here you can see down the bottom panel, 3 of the stream water collection sites on that mainstream system. About 3 or 4 kilometres of catchment in that particular study. Marara Station is in the Southland near Tianau, and you can see a very typical red tussock type country running principally deer in this particular country, quite wet. So a whole range of different climates represented here. Wairinga and King Country, the Oliver's Farm, and you'll note there too that there's cattle in there too, bulls, and we've got to be able to tease out the effects of these different species as well, so it's not just deer. And Halden Station, which is in the Mackenzie Basin, and many of you would have visited Halden, very picturesque backdrop of Southern Alps, very dry summer, a lot of briar, rose, Matagari type country, so typical of that particular environment in that area. So what we're really interested in is focusing on point source water contamination. This is where there are single points or key points in the system where the damage is occurring and contributing to the downstream quality, lack of quality of the water. And very typically with deer, these are the types of things we're seeing from wallowing. And interesting enough, we don't see a lot of wallows actually in streams, but they are near streams and they contribute to the contamination. Camping sites, trackings and crossings are quite common point sources for bank erosion, general bank erosion, and of course when you have farm livestock you have dead stock, so the contaminant ones there is actually a picture of a dead deer lying in a stream. And that's just part of livestock farming, but these are all things that we call point source contamination as opposed to general water flow systems or subsurface. The grading systems for point source damage include looking at the streams and giving them a grade 1 to 5 in terms of damage along the stream banks and in the streams themselves. Grade 1 is a pristine stream, and I have to say we very, very rarely have a grade 1 occurring on any of the farms. And that's just a feature of farming. There's always going to be an impact of livestock physically on stream banks and whatever. And we're not looking for pristine streams, we're looking for clean streams. So it's about being realistic about it. But when you get to grade 4 and grade 5, you're really talking about erosive damage that's putting a lot of sediments and contaminants into the waterway. And so what we do is we grade these streams all the way along their course, and every time the grade changes, we get a GPS point, and then we grade it again, and GPS point when it changes again. And over time, we build up a picture of where that damage is occurring, and how it mitigates itself and how it can be mitigated. But I'll sort of almost leave this with an interesting thing, is that it ain't always what it seems. If you don't measure, you don't know. Now this is an interesting case, and Mandy is quite happy for me to point out that this is on her property near Wanaka. There is a gorge near the bottom of the stream. You can hardly walk through this thing. It's a narrow gorge through schist rock, about 100 metres long, about 50 feet high, and at the base of that we recorded phenomenally high E. coli in the waterway. We thought, okay, we have to track upstream and find out where the source of it is. Immediately up from site 4, which is the gorge, and all the way up, there was virtually zero E. coli. And even where, and I have to say it, that dead deer, 1 metre below the dead deer, the E. coli was only 152. We automatically assumed that a dead animal was contributing to that contamination. It wasn't. Now, I'll leave it to you to guess where that contamination was. There's a few clues in the picture there. But we have to be very clear that, if we're going to start looking at contamination, it becomes a detective story, is where it's actually coming from, and it's not always as clear as it seems. So in this particular case, we believe that pigeons living in the gorge, and there are lots of them, may be contributing to an E. coli problem. Therefore, the next step on this farm is to type the E. coli and find out what the source is. So it's an interesting little thing. It's not what we expected to see, and really something you've got to drill down into. Next steps, we're starting year 2 of stream monitoring on the first 5 farms, but we're also selecting another 5 farms. I've got 4 farms lined up so far to represent a greater representation across the geography of New Zealand. We have one on the west coast, which is very high rainfall with a forest catchment. Another one in the Southland, which is extremely steep with a very high rainfall. Another one in the Mackenzie country with a very large stream catchment, which is a little bit different from the one at Halden Station. And one in Hawke's Bay, which has very dry summers coming through Limestone Hill country, so quite different. Really interested in a property in North Canterbury or Marlborough, particularly in the drier regions. So if any of you have one there and interested in that, be very keen to hear from you after the talk today. So this is the sort of expected range of farms that will be in the study for the next 5 years.